Well, today's a lot of fun because when I started test driving cars back in the 90s, these were the types of cars that you would get on a regular basis. Now they've turned out to be quite collectible. This is the Acura Integra GS-R, one below the Type R, and the Type R wasn't out for very long. This really was the model you looked at if you wanted the idea of having an Integra but wanted more power. So the GS-R is really a nice sweet spot for somebody that wants to drive but also have a little bit more power. And first of all, a shout out to Core Motor Cars, corecars.com. If you want to look at this car or any of the other cars, always got very cool inventory, and thank you for lending me this one for the day. It's a great looking survivor car, meaning it hasn't been modified. Typically with these higher performance Integras, guys would get them, change the wheels, change the suspension, change a bunch of stuff on them, which is fine. Pro tip, if you're ever going to do that, keep all of the original stuff, because there's going to be two camps. Guys that want it modified, which is cool, or you want to have it original, which is exactly what this is. Everything on this car is original. The wheels are original. The radio is original. It hasn't been modified in any way. So this is a fine example. Plus, it has low mileage on it. So this car's 20 years old now. It's got 60,000 miles or 107,000 kilometers on the clock. It's from Victoria, British Columbia, lived its life on Vancouver Island, living the dream over there. No salt, no rust. It's a good looking car and a great example of a survivor. So let's get in, go for a drive. We'll find out if this is still a current or contemporary car 20 years later. Getting in this car and seeing what was a premium car back in 2000 is kind of refreshing because it is so simply executed in here. There really isn't that much to talk about. I would suggest really the only luxury features are the leather seats, which are quite comfortable and they're in great condition. And also you get a sunroof and a few other things. You get a CD player, and I kind of like the fact that whoever owned this car didn't pull out the stereo. It's got the original radio, the original stereo. You can change all those things if you want, but I would keep every last bit of it, because there are certainly two camps on that. Everything original or modify it. Now, it is very simple in here. This is of the time, a lot of Honda and Acura similarities in here. The first thing you notice when you sit behind the steering wheel, the thin A-pillars and the huge front window. That was a hallmark. Anybody who drove a Civic in the 90s, you remember the low dash, the big window. That really was something they did incredibly well. So this car, as I mentioned, has 107,000 kilometers on it. Whoever owned it looked after it. It's in great shape. So I like the big banana shifter. Let's go for a drive. Red line right around 8,000 RPM, 1.8 liter VTEC engine. And these engines are just fantastic in an era when Honda really dominated. Think about this. This car had 170 horsepower. This was in the Type R. 170 horsepower from a 1.8 liter. So that's almost 100 horsepower per liter. That achievement did come later with the Type R and with the S2000. Those cars were able to achieve that output. But you know what? Think about this. Think about compact cars today with 170 horsepower. Most of them are around 145, 150. This has 170. So when you drive older cars, often there's a compromise. This still feels like a fun, sporty, powerful little hatchback even today. The way that the engine just revs so freely is fantastic. And the throws of the transmission, they're a little bit long, but ever so precise, and the clutch uptake is great as well. Now, I remember driving all of these cars back in the 90s, whether they were Civics or Acuras, and the Civics, I remember being incredibly loud. And this one, maybe that's what you got with Acura. You got a little bit more sound deadening insulation, but it sure feels, like I said, it's an older car, but a lot of modern attributes. Also that direct steering feel and the big window looking out over the road in front of you, right down across the hood. Great outward visibility. Why don't they make cars like this anymore? Actually, it brings up a good point. What the hell happened with a lot of the Japanese brands with their sort of fun cars. You know, Honda got rid of the Prelude, they got rid of the Del Sol, they got rid of the Integra. On the Acura side, so many vehicles that went away. Toyota, they got rid of the Celica, or in the US called Celica. Nissan got rid of the SX and the 240. Those were great cars, and they weren't crazy expensive. Now, if you want to get a fun vehicle in a hatchback configuration like this, you've got to go and get a GTI, or you've got to get the Civic with the sport model, or spend a ton more money and get a Type R. Back in the day, in the 90s, you know, a young guy or a young girl could get a fun little hatchback car that had good power, very functional. This one's got a useful back seat, it's got a big cargo area, and you didn't have to spend a lot of money. Nobody's really offering that anymore. There's a couple of examples. I guess you've got a Hyundai and Kia with the Forte GT and the Elantra GT, or the Elantra Sport, that are kind of falling into that camp, but they're almost 30 grand. Coming off the off-ramp, great handling, great sound. This one's a real time machine, very well preserved. And these engines, so this one's just getting broken in at 60,000 miles or 107,000 kilometers. Like a Swiss watch. I had a buddy of mine had the very first Integra, and I think he did 400,000 or 500,000 kilometers on his. That was back east in Ontario, and he had it rust-proofed every year, what have you. It just ran like a Swiss watch. You know, Acura does have a fun little car in their lineup. It's called the ILX. It's based on the Civic Si platform with the older 2.4 liter four-cylinder engine. It's a great little car. It's even available with a dual clutch transmission that you don't get on the Honda side. So that's kind of in the Acura family, something similar, but you know, not an inexpensive little car and kind of old technology. Now, if you want to go a little older, with older technology, you could drive this. Was this the pinnacle of Honda engines in the 90s when they made these fantastic engines? You know, there's been a lot of issues around the 1.5 liter turbo they use in a lot of their cars nowadays. I wish they would go back to these engines again and use them more often, because it's just fantastic. And guys who know these cars, they know that these are the engines that everybody wants. So thanks again to Core Motor Cars for letting me have this Integra GS-R for the day. Check out the website, Core Cars, easy to remember, corecars.com. Link is also below. So this car is now becoming collectible. It's 20 years old. It's getting into that sort of heading into collectible classic territory. And the problem we have with collectibles these days, whether they're Porsches or anything else that's kind of exotic, the prices are astronomical. So people are looking at something else that they could maybe collect. And they might have really kind of sought after this car back in the 90s, and now they're in a position to maybe afford one. It's not a bad pickup. You could buy this, keep it. I would keep it original, enjoy it, and sell it down the road. There's always going to be somebody that wants a GS-R in great condition with low miles. So thanks again for watching, and make sure to subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.